Hello and welcome to News Central exclusive on News Central TV. I'm your host, Kaide Akintemi, on this episode. Today we have a distinguished guest, a leader who has shaped the political landscape of Nigeria, and an African at large, a name synonymous with leadership and resilience. He served as Nigeria's president from 1999 to 2007, marking a pivotal period of democratic governance in the country. Before this, he was a military ruler from 1976 to 1979, skillfully navigating Nigeria's political complexities during turbulent times. His transition from the military rule to democratic advocacy highlights his adaptability and commitment to progress of the nation. Since leaving office, former President Olusegun Obasanjo has emerged as a formidable statesman and ambassador for Africa, dedicating himself and his life to regional and international initiatives that promote peace, security, and economic development of our continent. His extensive experience in governance and diplomacy has earned him global respect, and his insight into the challenges and opportunities facing the continent make him an invaluable voice in discussions about Africa. Join me in welcoming President Olusegun Obasanjo. In my tradition,
Thank you very much.
I welcome you, sir. It's such a great honor and privilege to be able to sit with you and have conversation with you. Your leadership has not just shaped the future and the political terrain in Nigeria, but across the continent of Africa. So in that case, let me start by quoting Simon Sinek. He said that leadership is not about being in charge. It is about taking care of those in your charge. And when you look at Africa today, Your Excellency, many across the globe argue that the ineffective leadership in Africa is a major hurdle to our development. What do you say about leadership in Africa, sir?
I will say generally, at this point in time, there's deficit of leadership in the world. There's global deficit of leadership. Otherwise, the situation that we found ourselves, I would say more or less since the beginning of this century, but particularly in the third decade of this century, should not have been the position the world will be. Globally, we are in a flux. The world is fractured. There is no assured peace or security anywhere. The experts have said that there are 57 or 58 wars going on in the world as of today. And there are 92 countries that are involved in directly or indirectly in wars and violence and conflict globally. Now, that is not a pleasant situation for all the inhabitants of the world. But we come home to Africa, and your question is specific about Africa. What affects the whole world in terms of deficit of leadership affects Africa, or even affects Africa more. You take our own sub-region of West Africa. There's virtually no country that you can regard as totally devoid of conflict of one form or the other, insecurity of one form or the other, instability of one form or the other, unpredictability of one form or the other. And in such a condition or such a situation, what form of development can you expect? And when there's no development, then you are actually inviting a problem. And that is the situation in most of our countries in Africa today. But as I said, we take the region or the sub-region of West Africa. ECOWAS, which was built 50 years ago, is now in shreds. That is an absolute great indication, of deficit of leadership.
Okay, sir. But before you go deeply into ECOWAS, sir, let me keep it within the continent of Africa before we come
I'm
home
coming
to...
back.
Oh, okay, you come
No, I
back, sir.
haven't
Okay,
finished.
sir. All right, sir.
Now, that is West Africa. You go to East Africa, things are not what they should be in Kenya. I was in Kenya. After the election, I had to go in. Things are not what should be in Ethiopia. I was in Ethiopia. Now, Djibouti, there are about 7 countries with bases and military alliances and military in Djibouti alone. So the Horn of Africa, you have Sudan, you have South Sudan that hasn't had real peace and stability since its creation. You have Somalia that is in tatters. And so that is East Africa for you. You take Central Africa, you have Central Africa itself, you have Gabon, you have DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, you go on down to SADC, Southern Africa. I know things are not what they should be in Botswana.
The election is coming soon.
So you can see what I said about deficit of leadership in Africa. And then we can go, if you want to, we can go deeply into any of the sub-regions or into any country. But the point is this: one may ask, what really is the cause? I will suggest 3 or 4 main causes. One is what I call poor management or mismanagement of diversity. You will agree with me that diversity is of God. Sameness is man-made. God is God of diversity. And any leader at all that be worthy of that name must be able to manage diversity in all its ramifications. But let's take diversity in the people of any country. Diversity of religion, diversity of tribe, diversity of ethnicity. In some, we even have diversity of race. We have, of course, in all countries, you have diversity of social standing within the community. How do you manage this? Inability to manage diversity properly in a way that you manage diversity to achieve harmony, cooperation, collaboration, everybody having a sense of belonging, having a feeling of stake is one major problem. Second problem that I regard as major, that may not be common to all countries, is where leaders, rather than manage the economy and the prosperity of the nation for all, they manage it for themselves and their kith and kin. What I call not just poor management of economy, but self-centered management of economy. And you can see that. And wherever you have that type of situation, you don't expect things to go the way they should go. The third point is inadequate understanding of the world we are in. Look, the world does not feel that it owes any country or any region anything. But if you understand the world and you go about treating the world the way you should treat the world, there's a lot that you can get out of the world. And let me give you an example. When I became elected president of Nigeria, one of the things that worried me and I wanted to do something about was debt relief. The quantum of debt that we were carrying, the burden was too heavy. We were spending $3.5 billion to service debt, and yet the quantum of debt was not going down. And I believed that we should seek debt relief. Many people inside and outside Nigeria thought it was a pipe dream. But I was convinced. I went to the World Bank and I started talking to our creditors. And what I found was that while they did not feel that they owe us that, they were, when you make your case and they find that you are genuinely showing and trying to carry out what they call reforms, and reforms really that they were asking us to carry out, is to reform that we should ordinarily carry out. How do you have public service delivered? How do you drastically reduce corruption? How do you manage your finances? Now these are reforms that nobody needs to tell us to do. And when they believe that you are doing this and you understand this is what the world expects of you, they will listen. And you may find the world more sympathetic than you thought. But the world does not feel it owes you anything. But if you show responsibility, let me put it that way.
If I may interject, what was it that was within your conviction that made you even seek that debt relief and actually went all the way till you got it?
As I said to you, I took over and I found we were paying over $3.5 billion to service debt. That's a lot of money. But the problem was that the quantum of debt was not going down because that amount of money was being spent to pay interest and to pay what they call penalties. Any default, you pay heavy penalty. Now, you can't show good cause all through for the debt. Let me give you the story of one aspect, just one aspect of the debt. It was a state negotiating for a turnkey project. It was carpet making. And the money was drawn down to zero without the land, the site being cleared.
That sounds ridiculous.
When I started looking into, debt, let's see. I then said, this I wouldn't pay. Then they showed me in the small print which says, once you sign, how the money is spent is not the responsibility of the lender. It's the responsibility of the borrower. So, I just dropped mine.
So there were no milestones for when you can draw down and draw down. You can just come in, collect more money and collect more money without doing anything.
But you have signed And so as far as they are concerned, you have signed. And how you spend the money. And so with all this, I was convinced that I could make a credible case, a serious case. And then, of course, on the other hand, they want me to do what is right, that I should not continue with the irresponsibility of the past, with the corruption of the past, and then open. The point is that these international, the international community know us more than we know ourselves. And at times we bury our head like ostrich in the sand. But they can't tell you. They know what you do. They know, and they will even tell you that, look, well, you have so much money outside. So, and of course, if you remember, one of the first bill that I sent to the National Assembly was ICPC bill to fight corruption. I followed that up later with EFCC bill, again to fight corruption. And they know that because these, the international community knows what you are doing. They know where, and they know where things are. So, convinced of the fact that we could not sustain the amount of money we were spending for to service debt, with the quantum of debt not going down, and any time we defaulted, they gave us heavy penalty. And my determination to do what will convince me, convince Nigerians internally, and convince our development partners or our creditors, then it took almost 6 years, but we got there. And at the end of the day, they were satisfied. And I even gave them assurance that the money saved from our debt relief will be spent on the sustainable development goal. And that was being done. You see, that's why I say, yeah, the world out there doesn't feel that it owes you anything. But if you do what is right, there's a lot you can get out of the world.
So when you look at what you did as a leader that was committed, that was resilient, that insisted the right thing had to be done, when you look at that and the achievement of being able to get the debt relief and taking it to near zero, and you look at what has happened since you left office, how do you feel? What is it that is in the quality
I feel
of
bad.
leaders?
I feel bad. That is again the point you are making, going back to your first question now, and going back to the general answer that I gave, that there's deficit of leadership. Now, as I always say, leadership is not a thing that you pick on the road. And not everybody is given to it. So when we identify leadership, we should appreciate it and use it to good advantage. And when I talk of leadership, I'm not talking of leadership just at the political level, in all walks of life. In all walks of life. And wherever you see leadership, whether it's in the private sector or in the public sector, whether it's in diplomacy or even in the church and the mosque, wherever we find a good leader, we should make use of that good leader to achieve maximum. Maximum. The point, unfortunately, in Africa generally, but in Nigeria particularly, is we take 2 steps forward, we take one sideways, and take 2 or 3 backward. That can get us far. So, leadership should be something we pay attention to. What do you say of a Nigerian president who came to office without a plan? Who came to office without a plan. And then he woke up and just said, oh, 3-point plan. What are the 3 points? What are they going to achieve? Who are the people who have worked on it? Oh, you come and you just open your mouth and make a pronouncement on something that has not been studied. Let me again give you an example. When I was military head of state, we decided to really be part of the frontline states to fight the last vestiges of colonialism and apartheid. And we were determined. So, as a result of our policy, our pronouncement, our determination, then we became known as member of the frontline state, even though we were thousands of kilometers from the front line. And we decided that we will do what needs to be done. And then we worked with the frontline states. And where it was necessary that we go the whole hog with them, we did. And at the end of the day, we succeeded. But it cost us something. But what it cost us could have been wasted, even on anything. But our commitment make African countries and the international community to take us seriously and respect us, and they respected us for it. And that's leadership.
Before we take a break, I'd like to find out from you. Let's drill in just briefly into the monies that were saved from the debt relief you used as part of the SDG goals, and you achieved a substantial amount of progress in that area. And you then suddenly wake up 10, 12, 15 years later, and you discover that Nigeria is using at some point 90% of its money to service debt, even worse than what you had left.
Well, then what do you want to make out of that?
But it's something that beggars belief, and I am wondering, someone.
Well, you come back to the same point you started with. Look, when I came in 1999, I met $3.7 billion in reserve. And as I've told you, we were spending $3.5 billion to service debt. That's all we had. By the time I left 8 years later, with debt relief, when I came in, we had debt overhang of close to $36 billion. By the time I left, with the debt relief and clearing what we had to clear, the quantum of debt that I left was about $3.6 billion from over 36 or around 36 billion. At the same time, the reserve that was 3.7 went to $45 billion. At the same time, we had what we called excess crude. This is the amount that is in excess between what we budgeted, that we will sell the crude oil, and what we actually sell it. Normally, we were conservative in budgeting, and but we call it excess crude. We had around $25 billion. So when you add that to reserve, we were talking of what? 25 plus 45, we were talking of 70. Now, the point is that I left in 2007. Today, 2024. How many years?
7, 24, that's 3, and 4, that's 17 years later.
Between 2007 and 2024, all that amount of money had gone, all of it. Not only that, all the money they made during that period had gone. And today, we owe more than we owed when I came to government in 1999. Why? Poor leadership, poor management of economy, corruption galore, pervasive corruption, which of course is also part of poor leadership. Not giving consequences, that when you do something wrong, you have consequences.
That's the one they've repeatedly said is called impunity.
Yeah.
No punishment for bad behavior.
Yeah. I call it lack of consequences. And in impunity. Impunity. You see, if you would be a good leader, you have to lead by example. Because the point is this, whatever you do, don't tell me what a man says. Tell me what a man has done. Then I will judge the man. The Americans have it in a nice way. Talk is cheap.
Yes. Very true. Baba,
They have it that way.
Yes.
Talk is cheap.
Let's
Don't
see what
give
you
me
do.
talk. Let me see action.
Yes.
Measurable action. Action that can be verified. Verifiable action.
Okay. Baba, we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll move into the next segment of our conversation. And I would like to use that opportunity in the next segment to still drill down on Africa. And we look from different parts of the continent, especially when we look at a place like Sudan and what is going on there. And I know you've traveled extensively. So we'll take a short break. When we come back, continue a conversation with Baba, the president, former president of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, will continue.
The emotions are high, people are angry, people are in tears. I notice.
All around me, there are people, many of them trying to salvage whatever they can salvage.
Ismaila Mohammed, who was shot by one of the officers of the Nigerian army. This is the hole where the bullet penetrated, and that's the second hole.
Right behind me are members of the Nigerian police force to alert the protesters that they've gone past their time.
They came out with reinforcement, basically. All right, at the moment, do roll on now.
It's such a joy and pleasure to get a chance to speak with the former president of Nigeria, one of those that's described not just as a leader in Nigeria, but a leader across the continent and a leader of the black race, according to quite a few Americans that I have met who said that the man represents the black race justifiably, and he does it in a way that shows the essence of the president, Olusegun Obasanjo. So, Baba, as we famously and joyfully and fondly call you, Baba, we look at Africa and we see the suffering of the people, and we claim or we believe very clearly that it is down to the issue of leadership. So let's drill down to a place like Sudan. I was in Ethiopia recently. I spent some time in Addis attending a conference. And the conversation was about the fact that it looks like practically the African Union and all the leaders within the continent have forgotten what is going on in Sudan. What is your thoughts about it?
I don't think it's that African leaders have forgotten what is going on in Sudan. I believe it's dereliction of duty and responsibility. That's the way I would put it. And maybe that, and I add to it what I said earlier, deficit of real good leaders in Africa as at today. I don't say there are no good leaders at all, but
which ones would you point to, sir? Are there specific
if you want me
standout
to,
leaders?
if you want me normally in a
Standout,
thing
maybe
like
2,
this,
3.
I won't want to point because, but when you look at Africa over the past 10 years or so, well, there's no leader that is without blemish. But I would say those that have, as far as I'm concerned, tolerable blemishes. I would take Rwanda, President Kagame. Yeah. Now, he took over a terrible situation where almost 1 million people were killed in a genocide. And the world, the international world, were falling there for almost a period of 4 weeks. It went on. It took over. And today, and that's what? 30 years ago. Today, Rwanda is a place Nigerians now go to for holiday.
For holiday, yes.
Now they go for honeymoon.
Yes.
Now they go for
wedding parties.
Wedding party. I don't know you know that. Now, what has he done? He has shown leadership by action, by example, by understanding the world and making use of the world as he understands the world. And by remaining focused. It's not a situation of 2 steps forward, 1 aside, and 2 backward.
Some part of the West say that he shouldn't be having a 3rd term or possibly 4th term. Is that something that worries you, or are you saying Africa shouldn't worry about how many terms?
I will tell you, if you want to that our friends from the West were worried. And I went to President Kagame, who is very close to me, is a friend of mine. And I said, look, 2 things. This was when it was going that he will have his 3rd term. And I said, let us talk. And the first thing he said to me, you know the situation of my country? Almost 1 million people were killed. The international community was folding their hands. What will you want me to do? Leave the country settled and go away because some people are saying you should keep 2 terms. And I couldn't answer him except that I say, don't you have some people who can take over or you can mentor? And he again answered, said, look, I've tried about 3 of them, and the 3 of them have disappointed in the process. And 2 of them are on exile. That's how bad it is. So when you have a situation like that, what would be your advice to the man? Now, because some people in the West are now saying this, oh, let me go. That would be utterly irresponsible. And in any case, the Western liberal democracy, is it working for us? Yeah. Even they are now complaining that is not what they expected. The American president would define democracy as government of the people, by the people, for the people. I believe that if he's alive today, he will probably amend that definition somewhat. Because what we have today is not government of the people, by the people, for the people. Anywhere. It's government of some people, by some people, for the people. How can we really get government of the people, by the people, for the people? And in our own culture and tradition, we don't have opposition. We go for consensus.
Yes.
We sit down, we talk. We go for consensus. And when we reach consensus, we go forward.
Winner
We
takes
march
all.
together.
So, Baba,
Now-
before you progress, let me just quickly nip in there. When you look at what Paul Kagame has done,
Yes.
and he's gotten a third term, and the country is progressing, the statistics that we're looking at, the indices for growth, is showing that Rwanda is growing and getting better by the day. Number of women in government is showing that they are matching the expected number even recommended by United Nations. Quality of education, Nigerians and the rest of Africa, they're going there. To the point where United Kingdom is even trying to bring refugees from the UK to Rwanda because they believe that they will get everything that they need there and so on and so forth. So let's bring it to your own term. There are Nigerians today that are saying that what should have happened is maybe Nigeria would have been better off giving Baba a third term. If you give a third term to Kagame and Rwanda is getting better, why shouldn't Nigeria have given Baba a third term?
Well, I don't know where Nigeria, but if I had wanted a third term, I would have got it. I didn't want a third term. But as I have said, I know some governors who are working for this, believing that if I, as president, got a third term,
So they will get
then they automatically.
okay.
That I knew. But
Yes.
that's their own, but I didn't want a third term. If I wanted a third term, I would have got it.
Will that
Now,
have worked for us as a nation?
Now, just wait. Look, getting debt relief is much more difficult than getting a third term. Getting a third term wouldn't involve me going to France, England, and America, and Japan, and Italy, and Germany to virtually beg. Now, the point is this. I alluded to that sometime earlier on. Leaders don't flock. So when you get one, use it well and use it maximally. How many times was Winston Churchill used as a leader? But again, the way of human beings. He saved Britain from the Nazis. And at the end of it, they call him a warmonger. He was lucky. He was a lucky leader. Because before, and they voted him out of parliament. You remember. But before he died, he was declared the man of the century. He was lucky. Many leaders were not as lucky. Many are appreciated after their life. And if you have any leader who, you see, another thing about leaders is they came in, when leaders come in, they are raw, inexperienced. And I have to learn and probably make mistakes. But by the time they are to go, whether it's 1 term or 2 term, they have gathered a lot of experience. And that is when they are more useful, like a smelly cheese, an old cheese. The smellier, the better. But that's the time they go. And some country, I believe we have to rethink, have something I call rethinking democracy. The Chinese don't do that. When you retire, you are still part. In fact, the facilities you have is as comfortable as when you are. There are 2 or 3 things. One, you do not go out of the country unless the state sends you. 2, you do not make a public statement. Whatever statement you need, you make it. There are 3, you are still part of the government because you are consulted. So, the present President Xi Jinping, the 2 presidents before him, 3, had 2 terms. And he had to go 3 terms. But he didn't decide it by himself.
Was his people that lobbied for it? His people lobbied for it.
No, it didn't. It's the decision of the Politburo, the decision of those who have even gone before him, who say, look, this is the best. So he has now become the link between the old and the new. Deng Xiaoping and others were the old. Although Deng Xiaoping was the one who initiated the policy of opening up, the policy of market economy with Chinese characteristics. But they go on. And you see, the Chinese plan 20 years ahead. And they continue, whoever comes. We
plan according to election cycle.
Our plans are too ad hoc.
It looks like we only care for the next election cycle.
Yeah. And look at your Nigeria today. The intrigue is all about the election, the party. Now, when do you pay attention to real development? All right?
Okay, so Baba, thank you very much, sir. And as I let you go, sir, are you a happy Nigerian currently?
Oh, I am very happy. I am optimistic. I am concerned. Because being concerned is different from being happy.
Being happy, yes, sir.
Being worried is different from being happy. I'm worried, though, particularly with the youth. I have always said it, and I will say it again. We are all sitting on a keg of gunpowder if we ignore our youth. They are frustrated, they are hungry, they are unemployed, and they are angry.
They're living in droves as well.
Yes.
Flying out of the country in large numbers.
Now, part of the lecture we had this evening is the amount of money we are losing by the Nigerian youth that gapper. And how can we stop that? I'm worried about that. Happy? Yes, I'm happy with myself. I had
Happy with the nation?
I had opportunity, and I did what I could do with the opportunity and the facilities and resources that we had. I wish others who followed after me